And people usually start learning meditation in the Buddhist tradition. They're taught, most people learn Vipassana meditation. And Vipassana meditation is referring to a certain term in Pali, which is insight, or, clear understanding. And it's taught in 2 stages, usually taught by focusing on the breath so that the mind stabilizes and you can develop a certain concentration, one-pointed concentration, using the breath as your point of focus. If you stay with that point long enough, you develop a certain, using the breath and body posture, you develop a certain quality called samadhi, which is calm abiding and a sort of peace and calm, which is involved in the focus, because you're not wasting your mental energy on all sorts of external and distracting things. You can stay with that focus, and then you have a lot of extra energy in your mind that you usually spend, all over the place. So, and that energy means that the calm and the peace of not being distracted all over the place is vibrant. In fact, the text describes it as blissful, which is rare. But still, the idea of samadhi is not just that you have concentration, but meditative concentration, contemplative concentration, means that you have a stability which is has something called there's some pleasure actually involved in it. There's some joy in your mind, and that encourages you to stay with the practice. That's the first stage, actually. It's called samadhi. And by being able to stay with that experience and to notice when your mind has left it and to bring it back, the mindfulness of being able to choose again that point, and then to notice that the breath and the body as you sit and observe are in a process of change. You start to gain what's called then the next stage of vipassana, which is insight into the nature of what you're observing. And that nature is generally thought of or taught in the Dharma as being, impermanent and without any self. So that's kind of the meditative vipassana approach, which is how most systems start teaching meditation. And yet, especially in vipassana, they tend to go very quickly through the samadhi part, the concentration part, because they want to get you to the insight real fast, so that you'll be free. You'll gain some truth and understanding into reality. And that's catering a little bit, the way it's taught, especially to Westerners, is sort of like, you go through samadhi so that you can get to vipassana, right? You go through the concentration, you stabilize your mind so that you can have some deep insight that liberates you from your attachments, because you see the truth of reality as being impermanent, non-self. And if you don't see that, then it's a source of dukkha. So, those 3 aspects of reality, anicca, anatta, and dukkha, impermanent, non-self, and, the source of dissatisfaction if you attach to it. That is that's the main insight that insight meditation is supposed to lead to. The 3 natures of reality, the 3 marks of existence, as the Buddha called them. And that is considered liberating insight, because it helps free you from the attachments that cause the suffering. Because why would you be attached to something that is impermanent without self? Especially if it's you. So selfless being attached is, contradiction. So you have deep insight into the impermanence and non-self of your own self, and it's a truly liberating thing. That's what, samadhi and vipassana as a system are supposed to realize. That's vipassana meditation in Theravada tradition. That is one part of the meditation system that the Buddha taught. And the Buddha taught, when he talked about meditation, he called meditation jhana. Jhana was the word for meditation. And jnana in the Pali became dhyana in Sanskrit, which became Chan in Chinese, which became Zen in Japanese, which is all describing what's called meditation. But the original name for meditation was jhana. And when the Buddha talked about jhanas, he was describing different states of absorption that the mind had, different states of different levels of complete focus and immersion in your meditation. And he actually defined 8 different jhanas, which were levels of that meditative absorption. And he referred to them when he described his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, about going through those 8 different jhanas. And when he gave instructions to his monks, his disciples after enlightenment, he would say, go to the forest and do jhana. That's what he would say, go do jhana. Right? Meaning, he was saying, go absorb yourself. Your mind should be fully absorbed in these mental levels. As time passed, those 8 jhanas became kind of ignored in the tradition. And the focus then became on samadhi and vipassana in terms of how meditation was taught. You got to stabilize your mind and have concentration. Concentration should be calm, deep, and solid. It should be really stable. And when it's stable enough, you'll start to have insight. And the only work you can do in meditation is on the concentration aspect of, securing your concentration on that single point. You can work on samadhi, vipassana will happen if you're doing it correctly. You can't work on vipassana. Vipassana is the insight that comes out of deep samadhi. Now, what happened is that in especially the Burmese tradition, which became sort of the main way Vipassana was taught, when it came to the West, and a lot of the Western teachers went to Burma and studied under Burmese masters, was that the jhanas were, just kind of, I won't say ignored, but they weren't emphasized because they wanted something like that was more teachable. And what was teachable was samadhi and vipassana, especially samadhi. Because the Buddha did not give instructions about the jhanas. He gave description about the type of state of mind that is involved with these different levels of jhanas, but not how you get there, right? So there was very little about what you do. Basically, you just have to keep meditating and work on these, this ladder. That's not incredibly inspiring to people who are feeling like there are 8 levels of mental, absorption, meditative absorption that the Buddha achieved. And it seems so far away from me just to have some peaceful and joyful calm. The first level is pretty, complete. If I can get through that, super, right? So that's why, understanding that it seemed like, and especially since there wasn't instruction. So the Buddhist establishment sort of decided that the focus was going to be on samadhi and vipassana, right? And it's only in the past half century that in some places in the forest tradition in Thailand, they started to talk about the jhanas again. But if you go to any Vipassana center, especially in the West, it's just going to be samadhi and vipassana, insight. They call it insight meditation, actually. That's what it's called. But the reason I want to talk about the jhanas a bit is because I've been talking about the Eightfold Path for the past 2 or 3 weeks, and starting with looking at sila, which is the virtue aspect of behavior, of speech and actions and work. And I looked at intention and understanding last week, I think. And I talked a bit about concentration. But when we actually go to what the Buddha said about concentration, I want to look at right concentration. Because sometimes we're meditating and we're thinking like, okay, it says like focus on a point. But what if I can't focus? And what is the focus supposed to be in? Is it just looking at, my breath? And what happens when, studies have been done about concentration distraction. They were doing some brain scans on people who were distracted a lot. Really. It was for educational purposes to find out what can help students especially be less distracted. Because it's a huge issue for just about anybody at work or school. Even if you are immersed, this is the question they're asking themselves, the researchers. Why is it that even if you are immersed in something that you enjoy, you still very frequently become distracted? Even when it's a very enjoyable activity, something that you like and are really committed to, you still frequently find every reason to think or look away. Odd, isn't it? Isn't it odd? Well, you're finding that there are certain emotion centers in the brain that affect the attention level. And when strong emotions are aroused, then the attention, the ability to attend and the attention level and concentration level is impacted. Okay, it's affected. Especially emotions that are either negative or positive, which, the Buddha could talk about this. That's called aversion or attachment, right? I mean, strong emotions that are either wanting something or not wanting something. One of the strong emotions that we don't really recognize in meditation, but it is one there, is boredom. When people are bored, they start to want to fill that with something. Boredom is also called restlessness, one of the 5 hindrances. When you're bored, it's because your mind is needing, right? You kind of feel like it's dull, but it's actually a needy thing. It's like restless. Give me something. That's the restless mind. And that emotion, which is a kind of a strong one, though you wouldn't call it strong because it's boredom, but it actually is a strong feeling because it makes you look outside of what you're doing. The other attachments you have also, when they come in forms of feeling tones, they impact your attention. So part of our meditative process then, in the combination of concentration and mindfulness, is that when you're focused on something, to be able to really honestly look and say, to recognize mindfully that emotion tone and that feeling, and also to recognize the pull it has on your focus. It's not enough just to notice that you are bored, but you should be recognizing what boredom does to your concentration. All right? It tries to pull it away to something else, which is going to impair, is going to limit the type of samadhi you can achieve. And if you want to progress through the jhanas, And I'm going to read the jhanas, and we'll see why we want to progress through them. Okay, because what the Buddha describes is worthwhile of more effort than we've put so far. At least I'll speak for myself. That when you read what he describes in these states of mind, as part of the meditation process that starts with just focusing on your breath, staying with it and going far, and working hard. Working hard at this to develop a really focused, clear mind. Then the fruits of this practice, what the Buddha describes, are really something that we should aspire to. And that's why I want to read some of the sutras here to hear from the Buddha what he describes, how he describes. This is under the rubric, under the category of right concentration. When the Buddha taught about concentration in the Eightfold Path, he explained the jhanas. And so if we want to understand what concentration is in our practice, necessarily we have to learn about the jhanas. And even though I'm talking about the 8, I think for us as practitioners, just go for number 1. So let's see what he says about the right concentration. And what is right concentration? There is the case where a monk, quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities. Okay, so he's already gone through sila. Okay, sila is already taken care of, right? And that's why I taught sila and being, because you got to take care of your behavior before you can have good meditation. Enters and remains in the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and mindfulness. With the stilling of directed thoughts, he enters and remains in the second jhana. And then he goes through and describes in the third jhana and the fourth jhana. Okay. With the purity of equanimity, mindfulness, neither pleasure nor pain, that's called right concentration. So right concentration, according to the Buddha's definition, is the 4 jhanas, the first 4 jhanas. There's another 4 later on described, but those are Bodhi tree jhanas. Okay? There's right concentration jhanas, and there's Bodhi tree jhanas. When you're ready to sit under the Bodhi tree, it's the next 4. But for right concentration, it's these 4. That's what he describes. And I want to read about these 4 a bit. Just the first one. Or maybe the second one, we'll get to it. And again, the point is that we want to understand what the Buddha meant by right concentration. And we want to understand right concentration because we want to practice it. We want to practice it in our daily practice of what is it to be concentrated. It's not like just reading a book and you don't leave the page even though your phone is ringing, right? Or even though there's a conversation going on in the other room and you want to join in. But it's not important, but you come back, and again you come back. Or you're sitting and you notice a distraction, come back, you notice a distraction, come back. That's a certain beginning understanding of right concentration. And I feel many meditation schools have shortchanged us on what right concentration is. It's more than just single-pointedness with mindfulness bringing you back to that single point so that then you can, immediately understand impermanence. Let's hear what the Buddha says about the first jhana, okay, which we should be entering when we're doing right concentration. There's a case where a monk, quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful qualities. Then he's repeating the beginning of the... First he went over the summary of the 4, and then he goes into each 4. Enters and remains in the first jhana. Rapture and pleasure born from this withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. It permeates and pervades, suffuses and fills this very body with the rapture and pleasure born from his withdrawal. There is nothing of his entire body unpervaded by rapture and pleasure born from this seclusion. That's actually quite vivid. And he goes and he gives a metaphor. For each one of the jhanas, he gives a metaphor. And the metaphor he gives for this one, he says, imagine if a skilled bathman, I don't know how he comes up with these, a bathman would pour bath powder into a brass basin, knead it together, sprinkling it again with water, so that this ball of bath powder, moisture, permeated within and without, would never drip. Even so, the monk permeates and fills his body with rapture and pleasure born of withdrawal. So the bath soap ball doesn't do it for me, but the teaching here that this first jhana, he uses the word, it's the Pali word used is called piti, and piti is physical pleasure. It's physical pleasure that permeates your whole body and mind. Permeates your whole body and mind. That there's rapture there. And that's that type of rapture which is accompanied by thought. This is what's, useful to understand here. That he's not talking about something so far out. You're still having thoughts at this point. And he said, and discrimination, meaning, and you're still able to notice those thoughts and decide that, that's not a thought I want. It's where most of us are. But for some reason, we miss out on the rapture. But the Buddha states this as the first level of right concentration. It's not just being mindful on a point, having thoughts and then realizing you're having thoughts and coming back to your point. Yeah, he described that. He said, you've got thought and evaluation, meaning the mindfulness is to evaluate the thought and realize I don't want to go with that thought. You still have thoughts going on. But there's this joy going on, or bliss. And I find that really powerful, because the meditation experience is kind of a little other than what most of us experience. Most of us are kind of used to sort of okay, let's hope for the best. I'll deal with my mind and I hope to get a bit calm here, relaxed, and, some equanimity would be nice. I'll try to be mindful and realize how often I'm distracted. And I'll go through the session and the bell will ring. And I'll feel like, okay, I can do it. The second jhana, he says, furthermore, with the settling and the stilling of thoughts and evaluations, he enters and remains in the second jhana, rapture and pleasure, born of this composure, of the unification of awareness, free from thoughts and evaluations, an internal assurance, like you are sure. You're assured that you can do it. So here we see that there's from the first jhana to the second jhana, and this is just from first level of mind to second level of mind absorption. Suddenly the second jhana is free from thoughts and has this internal assurance. It's like, I know I'm going there. I know I'm doing it. I know this is happening. That's really profound. And that's just the second jhana. If we can imagine going up 4 jhanas or 8, right? Already we went from this rapture and bliss with thoughts to rapture and bliss without thoughts, without disturbing thoughts, and with very strong assurance that you can do this and that this is true. reason I'm looking at this in terms of right concentration is to encourage us and perhaps even motivate us to consider that what we consider meditation is a lot broader than often what we take as meditation. That there's states of mind that can be reached and should be considered as part of this practice. It doesn't mean that you will sustain it. It doesn't mean you will sustain it. And in some other commentaries, one of the important points about the jhanas is that they're not impermanent. They're not permanent. That these jhanas are not like permanent, because then they start to be something we want to own and grasp and possess. They're impermanent states. But we should open our meditation practice to the possibility of joy. We should open ourselves as a real possibility that joy, pleasure, and the stilling of thoughts and a deep confidence in your own practice are possible. Not only possible, but they are the definition of right concentration. I think this is a real important part that often is not, considered. And I think one of the reasons it got a bit sidelined in the mainstream Buddhist tradition was because they seem so far from our, experience very often. One of the things I notice with people meditating and the questions I get with meditation is the incredible criticism people have for their own minds. The deep dukkha that people are carrying in relation with the relationship they have with themselves. The relation people have with other people, that almost seems easier. But the relationship people have with their own minds is painful. And the teaching that I am considering here, the jhanas, that go back to the original teachings when the Buddha was awakened and, in the real basics of the Eightfold Path, I think are there to support us and perhaps even somewhat console us to say, yeah, you've got all this dukkha. But your mind has this also. Your mind has this also. If you sit and you allow it, if you allow that open immersion, that fearlessness, if you allow the critical thoughts to just still, in that stillness, there's a deep truth of the nature of your mind. There's a chapter in Suzuki Roshi's book, in this book of talks called Nothing Special. And the chapter is called Enjoy Your Life. Enjoy Your Life. And he said the essence of the teaching, you should enjoy your life without being dependent on anything. And I feel that this is the type of, when he's talking about enjoying your life, free of all attachments, He was writing that chapter. He was giving that talk in 1969 when they landed on the moon. And he was saying it was, it's much more incredible, the practice. People can go to the moon, then they'll go to Mars, and they'll go all over the space. But it's still going to be like small-minded people going out into this vast space. Instead, to be a really big-minded person in a small space is better than being a small-minded person in a big space. And so when he's saying enjoy your life, it's coming straight from the first jhana. Straight from the first jhana. Jhana being the first meditation that the Buddha was teaching about, right concentration. As to enjoy your life means to first and foremost appreciate the nature of your own mind as the source of all joy. And that's what we're discovering here. When you still the mind, when you concentrate, when you don't get involved with all the thoughts, and the thoughts themselves quiet, so that you can see into the depth of that clear pool. But if the pool is moving with all of your distractions, you won't see under the surface. But when you let the surface of that water calm completely, so that it's like a mirror, it's a mirror that reflects, but also you can see deeply into. And that's the nature of your mind, that it perceives everything outward clearly, but you can see into it clearly. So the mind as a still pool has both of those qualities, clear reflection and clear depth. And in that depth, you see the joy. And then that joy is reflected outwards to everything else. That's what it means to enjoy your life. Enjoy, that word, is en means like within, like to empower. It means to empower, to create power in yourself or others. To enjoy means to find that joy within your own mind. And right concentration is clearly taught the way to do that. I feel we should take this practice literally and follow the instructions which are there for us in order that we will discover what we already have. But unfortunately, we're too distracted to see it.